thank you very much for listening to the last video we did. Was the Susan the Banshees top 5 in a dud. Loads of great responses, loads of great conversations going on, and some really good bits of information that I kind of missed out. So thank you for sharing that. So what I'm doing for this one is, now this is one of my kind of favourite bands. As you can see, I've got the t-shirt on, Visage. Bit of a giveaway. So I'm going to be doing a few videos on Visage, because Visage is a band which I absolutely love. I'm going to do 3 separate videos. I'm going to do one of their albums, which I'm going to do now. I'm also going to do one of their 12 inches. Got loads of 12 inches and some 7 inches. So Visage was a British rock band formed in London in 1978. The band became closely linked with the new romantic scene at the time, and they had a massive hit with their track Fade to Grey, which most people know, Fade to Grey, which was released in late 1980. They've had 2 top 20 albums, Visage and The Anvil, and the third album, which didn't do very well. It was a failure, to be honest, was Beat Boy, which we're going to talk about today as well, which led to the breakup with the band in 1985. The band at the time, this is kind of like the best lineup of any kind of band. You had Steve Strange, you had Rusty Egan, you had Midge Ure, Billy Currie, Dave Formula, John McGeoch, who I love, who was also in Susie and the Banshees, and you had Barry Adamson as well. We all know Midge Ure kind of wrote most of the songs and kind of the lyrics and everything. We know that anyway, but he went to pursue a career with Ultravox, who again did really well at the same time. But we're going to talk about their albums today. I'm only going to be talking about the first 3 albums, because to me that was Visage. Anything done later on wasn't really Visage or of its time. So the first album was simply called Visage. It was a debut studio album. It was released in November 1980 on Polydor Records. Before this, they had signed to a label with Martin Rushent, but that label kind of fell through. They'd signed to Bradar, released 1 single, and then they signed to Polydor. When they released this album, they also released Fade to Grey, which was like a massive hit around the world. This album did really well as well. It reached number 13 in the UK charts, certified silver by British phonographic industry in March 1981. Fade to Grey was released as a single and became a hit, reaching number 8 in the UK singles. And top 10 positions in Europe, including number 1 in Germany and Switzerland. I know Visage were massive in Germany, because I've worked with Steve for quite a few years. And I know we had to get music ready for shows in Germany. I had to do, live shows, Fade to Grey, so we did a new version of that. So I know he was massive in Germany. He loved going to Germany. We used to go to Berlin quite a lot together. Other singles from the album was Mind of a Toy, and the title track Visage as well, which are also UK top 30 hits. My favourite of all time, forget about Fade to Grey, great track, but was Mind of a Toy. Absolutely love that track. So the album itself, to me, was an incredible album, and this is it here. The artwork on the front, kind of very reminiscent of The Mind of a Toy, always like a puppeteer. But that was Steve Strange. I'm not sure who the artist was. I tried to find some information on that, but I don't know who that was. Loved the logo, exactly the same as the t-shirt as well. And you had tracks like Visage, Block and Blocks, The Dancer, Tar, Fade to Grey, Calypso Man, Mind of a Toy, Moon of a Moscow, Visage, The Steps. I mean, every track on this album is just incredible. The musicians involved with this is just incredible. So I'm not surprised this was an actual hit. Again, it came out in 1980. And I love the artwork. It's very much of its time. Think about Ultravox, Vienna, the artwork for that. This is very, it's quite dark, which I kind of liked as well. It reminds me of, every time I see this cover, I think of like Kraftwerk Showroom Dummies, that kind of vibe, Eastern European, that kind of vibe going on through this whole album. And it's a really complete album. I mean, the people involved, I'm not surprised it's not. But a lot of it was very forward thinking. I mean, blocks on blocks. I mean, some of the instrumentation, that, and obviously Fade to Grey, we know Fade to Grey was just a massive hit with that incredible video with Princess Julia and Steve Strange. And I think Steve was definitely the face of Visage, and I think he had a big part to play in the success of Visage, other than the music. The music was great, but they needed a great frontman, and you had Steve Strange, who was running the Blitz at the time, who was kind of at top of the new romantic scene. So these were definitely new romantic hits, as we'd call it. Quite a few singles off here. So there's only 3. But I do know Moon Over Moscow was released as a single. I think it was in Japan, came out as a single, Moon Over Moscow, which is a great track and great artwork. When I do the singles as well, you'll see how good or great that artwork is. And some of the artwork going throughout the singles is just great. The inside sleeve is great. So you've got a classic design, exactly the same as a t-shirt here. And just really simple on the back. Just really kind of simple credits. For instance, like photography was Peter Ashworth. That makes sense. Model on the front cover, Vivian. Modern Classics front cover. Makeup by Leslie, and then hair transformer. Inner sleeve. Special thanks to Martin Rushton for helping hand. Richard Burgess, computer programming. Bridget. So obviously that was her name, Bridget, who did the French vocals on Fade to Grey. So very kind of minimal kind of text on here. I think they could have done a little bit more, especially with the imagery of Steve Strange in the New Romantic Scene. Could have done something better here. But incredible album. If you haven't heard it, check it out. You probably know the hits, but definitely check this out. The first album, the debut album from Visage, Visage with Visage. Now the next one, again, is an incredible album. A lot went into this because obviously at this point, the New Romantic Scene was just exploded. You had, Duran Duran, you had Spandau, you had Visage, you had the Blitz, you had, everyone was taking a piece of the New Romantic kind of title. So obviously with that, a lot of money's been pumped into it. The second album came out in March 1982. 1982 being one of my all-time favourite years with music. Again on Polydor Records. And this time the album reached number 6 in the UK and was certified silver by the British phonographic industry in April 1982. The Anvil was recorded in the later part of 1981 at Mayfair Studios by the same lineup of the first album, except John McGeoch, who had left both Visage and Magazine to pursue his career with Susie and the Banshees. Original bassist Barry Adamson rejoined as a session musician, contributed to several tracks. The album was released in March 1982. It reached number 6 in the UK album charts, certified silver. So this album was named after a famous New York gay bar nightclub called the Anvil. The first single was Damn Don't Cry, which is one of my all-time favourite tracks from Visage. And when we, my band, obviously Punx Soundcheck, we signed to a label called Beauty Case. And the first single we signed to them was our version of Damn Don't Cry, which is Steve heard, and that's how we got to work together. But I absolutely love Damn Don't Cry. The vocals were by his famous DJ now and musician Mr. Cormac, who did the vocals on that. He was brilliant. He wasn't a singer at the time, but he'd done an amazing job singing the vocals. And we had Natalie, who was in the band called The Joys, doing the backing vocals, and she was perfect. You haven't heard our version of Damn Don't Cry, go and check it out. Which reached number 11 in the UK charts, Damn Don't Cry. The second single was Night Train in June 1982, reaching number 12. The album's title track was remixed and released as a promo single, as well as a German language 12-inch, De Amboss. It took me a long time to find that. When I do the 12 inches, I'll show you that. It was just literally black. The front cover was taken by Helmut Newton. The original vinyl, which is what I have here, we all know this sleeve here. This is the original release, because how you know it's original release, you've got a textured cover. You've also got the classic picture from Helmut Newton as well. But inside, you've got the poster. I'm going to show you the poster. We still have the poster. This is quite rare to find this, but inside, you've got this amazing poster inside the original release. As you can see, it's Steve with all the models from, I suppose it looked like the Damn Don't Cry. But that was the original poster that came with the Anvil. You know you've got the original release if it's got a textured sleeve on it as well. You can't quite see it here, but it's very, very textured. It's just what a sticker used to be. I used to listen to this all the time. Textured here. It's such a great image of Steve. Let's see if there's any information on here. The Anvil was the last Visage record to feature Ultravox frontman Midge Ure, who left the band after its release, commenting on its departure the following year. He stated, in later years, when reflecting upon the album, Ure also stated he felt the track, Again We Love, would have been a good single. And it is a very, very good single, but this is the last record he had anything to do with when it came to Visage. And you could definitely hear his influence through all of this. And I swear, in Damn Don't Cry, I think he's singing along with Steve, and you can really hear Midge's vocals. So if you know him from Ultravox, he's got a distinctive tone to his voice, and you definitely hear it a lot in here as well. But it's a great album. The back sleeve just had the track titles and all the credits. Again, very, very kind of sparse. I suppose it's very kind of Art Nouveau, really, very artistic. But the front is such a gorgeous picture from Helmut Newton as well. The inside sleeve, again, you've got this iconic photo of Steve doing his thing. Again, nothing on the back. And you just got the sleeve polydor in black. And obviously with the free poster. So if you can find the original version with the textured sleeve and the free poster inside, you're onto a winner. But that is Visage and the Anvil, the second album from Visage. Now I'm going to talk about the third album. As I said, as far as I'm concerned, Visage only released 3 albums. Yes, there were more that came out. Steve released some more years later. But these were the 3 albums with Visage, as far as I'm concerned. Third album, it was the third album. It came out in October 1984. It was actually recorded in 1983, but due to contractual obligations, it didn't come out till a year later. So the album was recorded and released as lead singer Steve Strange decided to make Visage a live band instead of being solely a studio-based project, a decision that left him working only with drummer Rusty Egan and a couple of musicians. So basically the rest of the band had gone. This is basically an album put together by Steve and Rusty. And I think Dave Formula played on a couple of tracks as well. A couple of tracks. Beat Boy was released as a single on 20th of October 1994 on vinyl and cassette by Polydor. The cassette version of the album features remixes of the album original track, which are really good remixes actually. I do have the 12-inch kind of remixes of that. You also have Love Glove, that was released as a single. And I think that was it for this album. And I know when they released the singles, they did a couple of mixes. I think there was extra versions on tape, that kind of thing. And I think when it got reissued years later, there's loads of extra tracks. There are some really good tracks on here. But there are some real duds, and you can see it doesn't really have the influence of the first 2 albums. But because it's still a Visage album, as far as I'm concerned, that's why I'm talking about it now. The cover, quite uninspiring to be honest. I never ever liked the Steve, and I think that's one of the reasons why I wasn't that big a fan of it. I didn't get pulled into this. I think the logo was a bit, it just didn't sit right. I think they could have done a much better on this. I mean, the Beat Boy and the Love Glove sleeves are slightly better. But the tracks on here, you've got Beat Boy, Casualty, Questions. Questions is a really good track. Only the Good Die Young, Can You Hear Me? Can You Hear Me is a really good track. That sounds, it's like harping back to classic Visage, that track, Can You Hear Me? The Promise, then you have Love Glove, which always makes people smirk. I think the music's great. It was of its time. They're really using them kind of classic, those 80s drums, like you would think of Janet Jackson and Cameo and, all that kind of, the 80s drum sound is all over this album. Lyrically, I thought it was, had moments of quite amateur vocal or lyrics in here. I did like the tone of Steve's voice. I think it had a good job getting his voice out of this. But I think lyrically, it was a bit amateurish compared to what Midge would have wrote. But at the end of the day, it's still a good Visage album. It didn't do very well at all. I'm not even sure if it even charted, to be honest. It's a shame. But this came out in 1984. By 1985, Visage was over. Years later, obviously, Steve put Visage back together. But it's not the same. We're talking about the original Visage. Now, my next video I'm going to be doing is going to be on the 12 inches because it had so many 12 inches out, some great records. So a bit of information on the different 12 inches. I'm also going to do the 7 inches because there's quite a lot of releases abroad, and there was kind of, really weird kind of versions coming out. But Visage are such an amazing group. They really, especially with the guys from Ultravox. Insane. The melodies, the lyrics, the whole lot. I mean, Fade to Grey is going to be here in 100 years' time for sure. It's just one of those tracks that's always going to be around. So that was the first album. If you don't know it, please go check it out. So that was Visage with the debut album. The second album was Visage, The Anvil, brilliant. I remember trying to get the original one with the textured sleeve and the original poster, and you're onto a winner. The third album was Visage Beat Boy, which was their very last album. They split up again in 1985. So that was my Visage albums. I'm going to be doing another video on this, the 12 inches. Thank you very much for listening. But if you've got any kind of information and anything I haven't spoke about these albums and about Visage, please put in the comments below. Be great to get a conversation going. Obviously, Steve is no longer with us. I'm also going to be talking about some of the stuff we've done together, which is quite rare now, including an unreleased remix of Fade to Grey we did with new lyrics as well. That we did sign to the major, but they never put it out in the end. But we'll talk about that. But join me on the next Visage 12-inch video coming soon. Thank you very much.